Welcome to Get Serious. Recording this one as I've just gotten back from mastermind up in the Vermont area. Crazy travel here, so forgive me if it seems I'm a bit slow here. But this was roughly a 10-person mastermind that didn't have anything centered around real estate. So this is the first time I've done a conference outside of like a somewhat real estate context. And I don't know how long. It's been close to a decade since that's happened. And first, it's just a, more unique environment when you're stepping into an area where outside of the two folks running the mastermind, like I had no idea who was showing up. And in fact, there was one other guy who was there that had been in the land space, but switched over to AI consulting. So he knew me and reads the Serious News newsletter, which I very much appreciate. But outside of that, like I had no notoriety for any of them personally, and not saying like that's always going to be the case. I think it's just a good example that even within your industry or even outside of or especially outside of the industry, like no one knows who we are. So it was kind of freeing from that perspective and a good reminder. So like it's multiple steps removed, right? Like I didn't have any personal history with anybody there. They didn't know who I was or associated like with my brand. They didn't know what my brand was. They didn't know even if they didn't know my brand, they didn't know like the type of business model we run as a land funding company. And even a step removed beyond that, they didn't really know the land space at all. So it's like multiple steps removed where there could have been some kind of familiarity with, at least how we operated or our space. So that was kind of a unique flair to the event, but it's one of the most helpful masterminds I've been to. And the guys running it, Ryan Levesque and his business partner, Richard Cousins, they were famous for the Ask Method, a marketing company that did extremely well, had a big exit from that recently. And, Ryan and his team, they kind of shifted around their branding to focus on this return to real concept, kind of figuring out that, a lot of folks are kind of inherently struggling with making sense of the world and especially their own personal world in this highly digitally impacted, AI impacted environment here where we're having less of a real connection with ourselves, with others, with the world around us. So he's kind of trying to tap into where I think a lot of folks are feeling a hole in their life and trying to kind of grasp around and quote unquote return to real. And that's actually his kind of rebrand, which was now like much more vulnerable, like similar how I try to do these podcasts or write the newsletters, versus kind of the incredible marketing setup. So like he was one of my first business mentors, and we hadn't been in touch for like almost a decade. But once he kind of shifted branding, I started following the content again, and and I saw this mastermind. I really thought, okay, yeah, this is worth jumping into, and very happy I did. Multiple business takeaways. That's a story for another time. But part of it was just being out in this environment. I'd never been to Vermont. I mean, beautiful spot, and again, they had a nice exit. These folks have done very well for themselves and, bought a 100+ acre farm in Vermont, which is beautiful views and, taking on like this whole homesteading lifestyle. Like, it's as real as it gets, right? With cows and chickens. And actually it used to be one of my first businesses, was trying to run a backyard chicken company and did not go very well. It's a story for another time as well, too. But it's like full circle coming back to these backyard chickens here, true like farm to table type of food setup, like stuff, we don't really think about, most of us, in regards to how we go about our daily lives. So like that was eye-opening in and of itself. Like there wasn't cell service there either. Another unique flair to being out in the area. And so like we just got to spend a lot of time on this, property and reflecting, as well as doing, work on our own businesses and helping each other, hot seat style, unconference style. It's always my favorite type of setup. And again, people from like all different industries. I've been to a number of these conferences or masterminds, and like I hadn't been to one with as many unique individuals there, especially in terms of just diversity of background, ages, where folks live, or their own, their business in and of itself. I feel like I'm going a little bit all over here just because there were so many takeaways, but I really wanted to center in on just kind of that return to real concept because, oftentimes going to some of these masterminds, especially the higher level ones, I tend to be on the younger side or the less experienced in terms of business. And so like I spent a lot of time listening and trying to get some other folks' stories, and that's how you learn, right? And just maintaining an open mind during all these conversations and hearing again people's stories and how they think about problems and the solutions they're solving for, and where it's not an approach that I would necessarily take on my own or even really think about necessarily, but it doesn't make it any less valid. Like it was a very helpful, eye-opening experience. Like, okay, that you're here and these other folks are here both for this return to real concept. I mean, also the business help. Like I'm always so business driven that it's like, just trying to find the next leg up to succeed. But especially in the land business and everything too, where you're dealing with so many different types of individuals and needing to know how to connect across like a wide array of people, like the buying, the sell side, your own employees, partners, what have you. It was very helpful just to hear a lot of what folks were going through and what they're looking for in their lives. And there was a lot of tears shed, which I really appreciate. Sometimes that'll happen during some of these masterminds. Honestly, I wish tears came to my eye more often. So those are usually like very memorable moments, and when something can impact you in such a profound way, like there's usually a reason for that. And, like I just noticed that with a lot of attendees, like they're really feeling at a very deep level, almost spiritually, about where they wanted to take their businesses or their lives. And again, really kind of sense that trying to reach for additional connection in a world that's just, increasingly driven by digital decisions and just a whirlwind of AI. And I think that's a microcosm of what's going on a much grander scale here, and something that I found particularly eye-opening and frankly beautiful to watch. And Ryan, again, he's one of the best internet marketers out there. He's probably not as familiar in the land and the real estate space, but has done extremely well on like 7x Inc. 5000 entrepreneur. Really knows how to market and build companies. And I remember like 10 years ago, it was just like, killer marketer setup, just gunning for building great businesses and all that, which is great, big inspiration. But, here, like, I could tell he was much more like emotionally grounded, and he hosted us at his house, right? Like it's a very special invitation to receive, and with his wife and his two boys at the house, and just seeing the love that he had for them, and how grateful he was for all of us to be there as well. Like I think that type of emotional resonance really persisted amongst us attendees as well. Like again, true return to real experience here. So I just wanted to share that, as far as, again, I can get into the business takeaways another time here, of which they're very profound and will play out probably over like the next 6 months or so. But from a more like metaphysical level, just an understanding of where entrepreneurs and humanity as a whole are kind of the rules of the road we're kind of operating from, and what folks are looking for. Like this was a very helpful experience from that perspective. And so, I think it's worth us all taking some time to reflect on what some of those concepts might mean for ourselves and each other, relationships. that might be closer and more important to you, or that you want to make more important to you. And then also like our industry, right? Like the land, it's called real property, right? Like it doesn't get more real than that. And that was like a great connector point too. It's like I'm so used to viewing land from just an aerial perspective, or photos, drone photos, what have you, and to be able to like walk such a beautiful property. And it's almost like my mind is oriented, like imagining where the contour lines are. Okay, yeah, there's some wetlands area, potentially flood zone, etc. So it's just an interesting perspective to kind of keep that in mind here, and get like true boots on the ground viewing of such a beautiful piece of land we're so lucky to have within our country here. So I think it helps reconnect ourselves to the whole point of our industry, and the fact that, again, folks are like in terms of like single sales and like cash sales. I mean, folks are shelling out 50, 100, 500,000, $1 million for a piece of property. Like there just aren't that many businesses out there, especially like on a B2C basis, that people are making such a large single transaction. So I guess just a good reminder of just how much value folks place into something that's real. So I'll leave you with that thought. SeriousLand.capital for any of your funding needs. Land Daily Diligence Facebook group for zero cost review your land deals. Getting back to that tomorrow afternoon. Have some lined up. And landpricer.com. Solving more issues on that end as well. Most reliable land pricing tool on the market. With that, subscribe and share. Take care, everybody. Bye.